Hi, I'm Jordan Lawrence. I am Director of Business Development here at EB5AN, and I previously was with a vertically integrated regional center and developer and spent about 5 years in the EB5 space to date. I'm born and raised here in Houston, Texas, and something that is very exciting and it led me to joining the EB5AN team is seeing all the growth that has happened since RIA. They are a leader of the pack in the industry, and not only in terms of volume that they are raising for EB5 capital, it really took seeing year after year of creating what I feel is the safest immigration investment vehicles in the space, whether that's in terms of security for the EB5 capital or projects with job creation already met and the permanent green card will be approved. It's really a great place to be working with so many intelligent colleagues who I feel have the brightest minds in the EB5 space. So very happy to be joining the team. So back in 2022, when the RIA was passed, a lot of us in the industry were uncertain how the future would unfold for EB5 with regards to set-aside visas, all the new transparency acts and measures that have been mentioned on this webinar, as well as processing times that had plagued EB5 in recent years, especially for Chinese and Indian applicants. And with the unfortunate situation that many investors from those countries are facing, perpetual backlogs in EB2 and EB3 categories, some of them might not even get a green card in their lifetime. And it's pushing a lot of people who are here in the US of Indian and Chinese descent to seek out faster options to getting a green card. And that's one of the most surprising and rewarding aspects of the RIA is people are getting green cards in as little as months. You know, most cases in rural projects, they're getting them in less than 12 months. So that's been very rewarding, as well as just all the new reporting requirements and weeding out of bad actors that previously had given the program a bad reputation. So it is as good of a time as ever to be pursuing an EB5 immigration investment and to be reaping all the rewards that were laid from the groundwork in the RIA. There's two things, and the first has already been stated by Brian and Mila, but I think it really just shows what our core value is at EB5AN, and it's transparency. And being around in the EB5 space for some years now, and seeing a different approach to being a regional center versus being with a vertically integrated developer and regional center, you realize that information is power, but it's also leverage. And most regional centers that you'll see in the market and how they put their offerings out there, they almost withhold as much information as possible to keep leverage over the investors. And you know, hopefully the project works out and it has success, but that's probably why you've heard of so many horror stories of investors not knowing what they were getting into, not knowing what the project was structured like, how things were likely going to move forward, worst case scenarios, risk mitigation, all that. And that's how, you know, EB5 unfortunately had been practiced for a long time, but EB5AN has always prioritized transparency. Anything you want to know about the projects, whether it's financial statements of the developers, financial statements of the projects, actual sales activities, we really are an open book and pride ourselves on that. And rather than keeping the leverage for ourselves and retaining as much information as possible, we want to give and share that information just so you can make an informed decision. So whether you choose our project or not, the empowerment was given to you to at least make a better informed decision about your EB5 process. And that's something that I think is really unparalleled in the industry. Yeah, following that up, Mila, it's not often that the lay investor or common person is able to speak with the founders and principals of a firm that's helped raise more than $1 billion in EB5. I mean, I've had a background in finance and development, and it's typically very difficult to access the principals. They're very busy, and they have other obligations. But Mike and Sam really prioritize taking care of our investors, being accessible, being an open book. This has been redundantly stated, but it really is our core value at EB5AN, and transparency. And I would like to make one other point that Keith discussed earlier, and it's regarding security. And as everyone knows, EB5, it does have some bit of risk. There's never a safe project, 100% safe, I should say, in any investment, unless you're buying 30-year T-bills, and then that's a different story, depending on the situation here in the U.S. But with that being said, there's a lot of EB5 projects that don't have worst case scenarios or safeguards in place. And that's something that really our projects sell themselves, because they're conservatively underwritten. But in the event that things go south, in the event that there's a default by the developer, or some adverse situation happens, we have risk assurances. We have avenues or assets to go after, whether it's corporate guarantees, the underlying project, to give our investors the best chance at recovering their full capital. So it's not always, or it's not only prioritizing safe immigration paths, but it's creating an opportunity and platform as safe of an investment path as possible. So when the RIA passed in 2022, and then coupled with the very high interest rate and cost of capital environment, you started to see a lot of developers come into the space looking to secure EB5 capital, and it really increased the activity from a fundraising perspective of the developers. But unfortunately, what that has led to is poor structured projects, developers that have no experience with EB5, or who probably couldn't seek financing elsewhere, hence why they're turning to EB5. So one of the things that sets us apart is our longstanding and great relationship with a developer like Kolter. They've done more than 30 billion in assets developed throughout their decades-long history. They've never failed to repay a single debt in their time in developing real estate. And working with them has provided not only us, but the investors of ours with unparalleled investment opportunities and access to these types of projects that they wouldn't otherwise have. So Kolter, in their EB5 offerings, which we've done more than 20 of throughout our time since 2013, they have very strong positions backing them, such as a guarantee from a parent company, which is an added layer of security for the EB5 investors in the project. And that's something that you don't see common in EB5. Yeah, as I was mentioning, we've done more than 20 projects with Kolter, but Kolter has a lot more than 20 projects under their belt in their history. And this gets back to how we conservatively underwrite every offering that we're taking on to raise EB5 capital for. So Kolter has dozens of projects ongoing at any given time, and we're only cherry picking the safest of those to provide these investment opportunities for our clients. So I really think a partnership with a developer like Kolter, and then the resulting offerings that we structure with them, are some of the safest and most secure immigration investment vehicles in the industry, and one could find. Yeah, it's a very different perspective to be acting as a fiduciary, as a regional center on behalf of the EB5 investors, rather than being the GP, having LP shares as well alongside the EB5 investors, which is the developer and regional center model. And it goes back to how we conservatively structure projects. What if things go wrong? Well, if you're a developer and a regional center, I mean, what is forcing you to abide by the commitments you made to EB5 investors? What is forcing you to do the right thing and repay their capital if there's no security measures in place? So really separating and eliminating that conflict of interest is a protection and another safeguard for EB5 investors. And just to tie back in my point from earlier, information's power, and it can be used as leverage. And to quote Bon Jovi, a lot of EB5 investors are really just living on a prayer with their projects. They're relying on hopeful wishes or promises that sales will pick up, or maybe that construction will actually begin, things like that. But we show you, we don't tell you. You can see the balance sheets. You can see actual sales activity. You can go to the sites. You can meet with our principals. You can review financial statements. And that's something that you don't find commonplace in general investments, unless you're going with an SEC registered company on the stock market, things like that. But specifically in EB5, you're going to be hard pressed to find that type of regional center. There's a saying that we have here in the U.S. There's two certainties in life: death and taxes. But for anywhere in the world, I think people could probably add two more things to that. And it's usually dreadful conversations whenever you're speaking with a doctor or an attorney. But this is not something that you should be scared for. And this is actually something that you should pursue relentlessly, is a very experienced EB5 immigration attorney. As Keith mentioned, it's a very niche type of filing. It requires extensive experience, and they're going to be your advocate to the government. You want a great attorney. You want to be communicating with them as frequently as possible. So this isn't something to be scared of or shy away from, but actually to run with open arms too. And to drill down onto what Keith is saying, it's very important that you find an independent attorney. And what we mean by that is you don't want to be engaging an immigration attorney who also represented the regional center and their petitions for 956, 956F, H, G, etc. To the USCIS, because if something goes wrong, who are they supposed to counsel? You, the investor, or their immigration attorney, or excuse me, the regional center. So that's what we mean by conflict of interest. We won't introduce you to an attorney who represents us. We're only doing that or making introductions to attorneys whom can advise you and you alone through the process. Some investors come to us with an attorney already engaged, and we are happy to work with them. And chances are they probably have worked with us because we've worked with hundreds of immigration attorneys here in the U.S. Now, if you don't already have one engaged, we're more than happy to introduce you to a few attorneys. And if you're unsatisfied with any of them after having free consultations, well, then we could point you in other directions or to other resources where you could Google, do your research, and interview your own counsel choices. So whether it's someone you already have engaged, chances are they've worked with us and we'd be happy to work with them. Or if you need some help along the way, we're more than happy to lead you to what will be your immigration counsel.